talk a bit about solar. Let's talk about, so there's different things we have here. Cedric, could you talk, maybe you start, but what do we see
absolutely.
here?
Well, here we can start off with this one right here, which is a solar thermal collector. And basically what this is made out of, these are basically what they call evacuated tubes. So within this tube is basically, it's a vacuum, and we have a liquid in there that as the sun hits this tube, that liquid would heat up and actually turn into a gas. That gas would rise up into this part, which is called the plenum or a manifold. And then basically here you have two pipes where you have a water or a glycol, something like an antifreeze, run by and actually grab that heat. And then we actually use that heat inside your home for domestic hot water, taking showers and stuff like that. Or it can also be used to actually heat your home as well.
And so would that get you up to speed? Yeah, you can put it down there. I don't want you to cut yourself. But would that get you up to like how hot would it get the water generally? Do you know?
Oh, it gets very hot. We try to keep it right below boiling, and actually a lot of the systems here they have safety mechanisms in it to make sure it doesn't boil.
Okay.
But because it's pressurized, we can actually get a high heat right around the 90 to 110 degrees Celsius. Through there. And
I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard too, sometimes the efficiency is also using that to get the hot water from here to here, like even using a little bit of gas, but instead of using gas this much, it's about getting it this hot and then just topping it off with a bit of non-renewable. Is that
absolutely? Yeah, we call that like a primary heat, so or a secondary heat, where it's preheating a tank of water that then is tied to your main heating system.
And so what? I guess you'd need pumps still. You'd need electricity, or how? Tell me a little bit more about how. Do you guys know how the system works? Or a little bit, or
yeah, I actually installed one of these this summer, which
oh,
was
really?
a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay, tell me a bit about it. Tell me a bit more.
So you do still need the pumps. So typically, what you have in there, at least in Canada, is, as Cedric said, you'll have glycol or something like antifreeze, and that's so that in winter it doesn't freeze and burst the pipes, ruin the system. So you have basically you're going to have your pump, and it's going to circulate the glycol through the tubes up the top here, going down into your hot water tank and through a heating coil there. So the water is able to absorb the heat from the glycol as it's pumped through. And that's essentially how you're heating your tank. You're not always going to be able to get your hot water tank up to the temperature you need, and that's when you would use additional backup with a non-renewable source, such as an electric heating coil or a natural gas.
Cool. And tell me, so when you installed it, just this is off the cuff, but how was it? Like, what was it like to install? Was it hard? Was it easy? Like, you did it this summer. What was it like?
Yeah, I did do it this summer. So it was reinstalling the system essentially. The clients had already had it, but then they wanted to redo their roof. So they redid their roof. The system had to come off. The roof was done, and then we had to put it all back together. Essentially, you're starting from scratch. Yeah. It's not a lot of work. These are very light, the tubes. This all comes apart actually. So your tubes are separate from, the big header that you've got there, and then it's all mounted on a frame. It is very delicate work because those are made of glass. Yeah. They are very breakable. You have to be very careful with them. One may or may not have been broken.
Okay. That's okay, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and then the system needs to be primed once it's all installed. So you actually, fill it with glycol, you get your pump, and you make sure there's no leaks, and that it's all working properly.
Well, I think, and like it's going to look, different solutions for climate action are going to look different all across the globe. I think, and probably depending on weather and stuff like that, there could be better solutions here and there. The one thing I find interesting, and just the fact that, like, honestly, until I started reading a bit about it, I didn't even think about how my hot water was heated. Yeah. Like I just kind of turned it on and it was hot, right? And no, there's natural gas, which is really methane, right, for the most part. Yep. And that's a greenhouse gas that we're using to burn. And there's just different ways to heat up the water, right? That's the way I look at it. So and you had an interesting story, because I know, what did you see when you were abroad, different application of this?
Yeah, so in different parts of the world, they use different stuff. So really in the developing nations, we see China and India, they're really pushing the solar thermal. Yeah. It's really a system that you'll see all over rooftops across all the cities they have there.
But another thing I know when I traveled, and this was years ago, back when you should have seen the full head of hair I had back then. But was just the fact that the tank was also on the roof, right? Is that what you see as well?
Yeah, exactly. Everything's up
but
there.
I love this is just thinking of just the idea that we need hot water. We're currently heating it with gas, and there's other ways to do it. And I think that's really important. But Cedric, I know you and I were kind of talking about this. In where we are today for efficiency, in Ontario anyway, what would you suggest instead of maybe a solar thermal panel like this, depending on application, right?
Absolutely. I think the big change that we've seen in renewable energy is really how the price of photovoltaics or PV has dropped dramatically in recent years. And where these systems, do work very well, but they are very cumbersome, and there's a lot of maintenance and potential leaks and just a lot more work involved into getting a solar thermal system working. Where now with the price of PV being so low, you can almost just install photovoltaic panels and then heat up your water with electricity that you've produced from your solar panels, which is actually a little bit less maintenance of a system.
Yeah.
And right now is actually quite cost beneficial.
Okay. So then that's what, either way though, I think the one thing that about this show and what I'm really, it's, either way, we have to get off fossil fuels, right? So, and then we've also actually, if you want to grab, I don't know if we can get, because we've said PV, but if we want to grab that panel there, because before we kind of dig in and talk about it, could you guys, could you tell me a little bit more about this panel here?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of this is one you typically see on a residential home, or anywhere really. These are our fun little test panels. They're made of actually just offcuts of solar cells that the other half cracked, or they've just been recycled.
So this is kind of like a demo.
This is just a little demo.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
just a baby.
Absolutely. It's just a baby. Yeah. So essentially, what happens is when sunlight hits these solar cells, electricity is produced just by the way it's silicone. These little chips. They're about the thickness and consistency of a potato chip.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very delicate, but they're protected by glass. So this is actually the tough side of a solar panel. You don't need to worry about this. It's the back side that you want to be a little more careful with. And they produce electricity, and whether the camera can see it or not, I'm not sure. But all of these cells are linked together with this conductor, and away you go. So all of these are hooked up together. We've got a little junction box at the back there. These are where your leads come out, and they can hook into another panel, and that's going to run back into your home.
Well, this is really interesting stuff, guys. And actually, I want to dive right into this. And I also, you have some other stuff here today, so totally want to talk more about this. But we just need to take a quick break. We'll come back to look at the other things we can do around our homes in our community with renewable energy. Thanks again.